Resuming debate. The Honourable Member, the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Canadian Heritage and Multiculturalism. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I'm with the member from Oakville, North Burlington this evening. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to speak in support of Bill C-59. With this bill, our government is entrenching our commitment to balancing the primacy of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms with protecting our national security. We are enhancing accountability and transparency. We are correcting the most problematic elements of the Harper government's old Bill C-51. Our government conducted an unprecedented level of public consultation with Canadians about our national security in order to effectively develop this very bill. Canadians have told us loudly and clearly they want a transparent, accountable and effective national security framework, and that is exactly what we will accomplish with Bill C-59. The Minister then took the rare step of referring Bill C-59 to the Standing Committee on Public Safety after first reading, Mr. Speaker, underscoring our government's commitment to Canadians to ensure we get this important legislation right. Prior to the bill returning to this chamber, Mr. Speaker, it underwent an extensive 4-month study hearing from nearly 100 witnesses. I would like to thank the members of the Committee on Public Safety and National Security for their hard work in studying this bill extensively and for their comprehensive report. Fundamental to our promise to bring our national security framework into the 21st century, we are fixing the very flawed elements of the old Bill C-51, which I heard so much about from my constituents in Parkdale High Park during the 2015 electoral campaign. I'm proud to support this evidence-based, balanced legislation, and I'm reassured to see positive reactions from legal and national security experts right around the country, including none other than Professors Craig Forces and Kent Roach, two of the foremost legal academics in Canada who have been at the centre of concerns about the overreach of the Harper government's old Bill C-51. Professors Forces and Roach have said, and I'm quoting, quote, Bill C-59 is the biggest overhaul in Canadian national security since the creation of the Canadian Security and Intelligence Service in 1984, and it gets a lot of things right, end quote. Bill C-59 builds on our commitment to enhance accountability, which started with our government's introduction of Bill C-22 in 2016. Bill C-22, which has received royal assent, established an all-party committee of parliamentarians, representatives elected by the Canadian public, to review and critically analyze security and intelligence activities. For the first time in history, a multi-party group of members of this chamber, as well as the Senate, are now holding Canada's security apparatus to account. We are building on Bill C-22 with the current Bill, C-59, which will establish a National Security and Intelligence Review Agency. The NSIRA, as it is known, will function as a new expert review body with jurisdiction across the entire government, Mr. Speaker, to complement the efforts of the recently established Parliamentary Oversight Committee, which I just mentioned. This feature incorporates one of the most important recommendations of both the Meher-Arar inquiry, which called on the government to, now I'm citing recommendation 16 from the Arar inquiry, to, quote, develop a protocol to provide for the coordination and coherence across government in addressing issues that arise respecting national security, end quote. And again, that's the Meher-Arar recommendations. With the establishment of a Parliamentary Oversight Committee in Bill C-22 and a new arm's-length review body in Bill C-59, we are addressing the glaring gap that exists in our review bodies for national security agencies. Currently, some agencies do not have a review body or are in charge of reviewing themselves. We cannot allow the lack of such fundamental oversight to continue, especially with regard to the safety and the security of Canadians. As Professors Forces and Roach have observed with respect to Bill C-59, again I'm quoting, the government is finally redressing the imbalance between security service powers and those of the review bodies that are supposed to hold them to account. Bill C-59 quite properly supplements the Parliamentary Review Committee with a reformed expert watchdog entity. Expert review will be liberated from its silos as the new review agency has a whole-of-government mandate, end quote. This is a critical piece in our government's work, Mr. Speaker, providing my constituents in Parkdale High Park, and indeed Canadians right around this country, with a comprehensive and responsible national security framework.
Beyond installing an oversight body with the NSIRA, C-59 also mandates increased and improved communication between this body and various relevant oversight agencies, such as the Privacy Commissioner. This will not only increase the efficiency of work, and avoid duplication of efforts and unnecessary expenditure of resources. It will also facilitate a more holistic approach to addressing privacy and security concerns at the federal level.
Of Parkdale High Park. In 2015, I heard about the Harper government's old Bill C-51 over and over again at the doors. The major concern from residents expressed to me was the threat posed by the previous government's C-51 to their constitutional rights and freedoms. Mr. Speaker, the residents in my community are an intelligent and engaged set of citizens, and they were onto something. The federal government, under the guise of quote-unquote public security, cannot be permitted to infringe on the rights and freedoms that are fundamental to our very society, to what it means to be Canadian. Yes, ensuring public safety is the preeminent responsibility of any government, Mr. Speaker, but it is simply not acceptable to pursue security at any cost. My constituents, indeed all Canadians, expect a government that respects fundamental constitutional rights, a government that will put in place mechanisms and safeguards to protect those rights. That is precisely what Bill C-59 will achieve. How? First, Mr. Speaker, Bill C-59 will tighten the definition of what constitutes terrorist propaganda, in quotations. The more narrow and targeted definition will ensure that the sacrosanct protection of freedom of expression under Section 2B of our Charter is observed, that our security laws in Canada are not so overreaching as to limit legitimate critique and debate. Two, Mr. Speaker, as a corollary to this very point, Bill C-59 will also protect the right of all Canadians to legitimate protest and advocacy. One of the most searing criticisms of the Harper government's old Bill C-51 was that bona fide protesters who dared to disagree with the government of the day could be caught up in the web of security sweeps, all in the name of public safety. Mr. Speaker, that is not how our Liberal government operates. We respect the Charter and the right of all Canadians to engage in legitimate protest and advocacy, whether they represent a group with charitable status who oppose a government policy, or a gathering of students on a university campus who take up the call for more aggressive investment of federal funds to support the expansion of women's rights internationally. That kind of advocacy is not a threat to our public security, Mr. Speaker. To the contrary, it is an enhancement of our democracy. It is civil society groups and public citizens doing exactly what they do best, challenging government to do and to be better. In Bill C-59, we recognize this principle, Mr. Speaker. We are saying to Canadians, you have constitutional rights to free speech and protest, and we're going to affirm and protect those rights by correcting the balance between protecting safety and respecting the Charter. Third, Mr. Speaker, Bill C-59 will also upgrade procedures as they relate to the no-fly list. We know the no-fly list is an important international mechanism for keeping people safe, but that its use has expanded to the point of encroaching on Canadians' rights. In Bill C-59, we are determined to address this imbalance. Our changes to the no-fly list regime will do the following. They will require the destruction of information provided to the minister about a person who is on board or expected to be on board an aircraft within 7 days following the departure or cancellation of the flight. It will also authorize the minister to collect information from individuals for the purposes of issuing a unique identifier to them to assist with pre-flight verification of their identity. This is a critical step, Mr. Speaker, which will provide us with the legislative tools needed to develop a domestic redress mechanism. The funding for a domestic redress mechanism was delivered by our government this year, specifically $81.4 million in budget 2018. But in order to start investing this money in a way that will allow Canadians who are false positives on the no-fly list, including children, to seek redress, we need legislative authority. Bill C-59 provides that legislative authority. Finally, Mr. Speaker, and fourth on this point, Bill C-59, with this bill, we are re-establishing the paramountcy of the Charter. I speak to you now as a constitutional lawyer who practiced in this area for 15 years prior to being elected. It is unfortunate that the paramountcy of the Constitution needs to be entrenched in law, Mr. Speaker, because as a lawyer, I know, and we should all know, that the Constitution is always paramount, the document against which all other laws are measured. Nevertheless, the previous government's disdain for the Charter has made this important step necessary. So, Mr. Speaker, with this bill, what we will do is entrench in black and white that any unilateral actions by CSIS to collect data in a manner that might infringe the Constitution is no longer permitted. Instead, under C-59, any such proposals must now come before a judge who must evaluate the application in accordance with the law, where protecting Charter rights will be the paramount concern. Our party helped establish the Charter in 1982, and our government stands behind that document and all of the values and rights it protects. Mr. Speakers, as I've said before in the House, as many people have said before in the House, the task is to balance rights and freedoms while upholding our duties to protect the safety of Canadians. That's not an easy task, but I'm confident that with C-59, in partnership with C-22, it provides a comprehensive and balanced approach to national security. It is respectful of the Charter and our Constitution. That's why I'm supporting this bill. I ask all members to do the same. Merci beaucoup.